It began as a quiet conversation behind Buckingham Palace walls, one so sensitive that even veteran aides were instructed to leave the room. Within hours, unusual movements were noticed across royal residences. Private schedules were altered, and senior officials suddenly canceled public engagements. Something serious had happened, and as whispers spread through palace corridors, one terrifying question emerged: was the monarchy facing a crisis unlike anything seen in generations? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. At first, there was only silence. The kind of silence that often speaks louder than any official statement. Buckingham Palace had weathered countless storms over the decades, from public scandals to private heartbreaks. Yet this felt different. Staff members who were normally seen moving confidently through their daily routines suddenly appeared unusually cautious. Meetings that had not been listed on official schedules were taking place behind closed doors. Senior aides were arriving earlier than usual and leaving much later. For those who closely follow the royal family, these were the kinds of details that rarely went unnoticed. Then came the announcement. Brief, carefully written, measured in every possible way. Buckingham Palace released an unexpected statement that immediately captured public attention. Yet instead of providing answers, it seemed to create even more questions. Royal observers quickly noticed the unusual wording. Every sentence appeared deliberately chosen, every phrase carefully weighed. It was enough to confirm that something significant was unfolding, but not enough to explain the full picture. As news of the statement spread, concern began growing far beyond palace walls. Senior royals were reportedly summoned for urgent consultations, an extraordinary development that immediately fueled speculation. Members of the family, who had been expected to carry out public duties suddenly, found their schedules changing. Appearances that had been planned for weeks quietly disappeared from official calendars. No explanation was offered. No clarification followed. The silence only deepened the mystery. Inside royal circles, the atmosphere reportedly became increasingly tense. Palace staff were instructed to maintain strict discretion, an unusual level of secrecy even by royal standards. Those who had spent years navigating sensitive situations understood that such measures were rarely implemented without serious cause. Meanwhile, royal watchers began comparing notes, connecting recent events that had previously seemed unrelated. Small details that once appeared insignificant suddenly took on a much greater meaning. The rumors spread quickly. Some dismissed them as speculation. Others feared there was truth hidden beneath the whispers. Media outlets across Britain and beyond scrambled for confirmation, reaching out to sources and experts in an effort to understand what was happening. Yet reliable information remained frustratingly scarce. Every passing hour seemed to intensify public concern. The lack of answers created a vacuum, and into that vacuum rushed countless theories, assumptions, and fears. What nobody knew at that moment was that the statement itself represented only a fraction of the story. Behind the scenes, conversations were taking place that would leave even seasoned royal observers stunned. Decisions were being weighed, consequences were being considered, and the true scale of the situation remained hidden from public view. But the announcement itself was only the beginning, because hidden behind the carefully chosen palace words was a far more troubling reality. When Buckingham Palace finally broke its silence, the statement seemed brief and controlled. Yet every sentence carried a weight that could not be ignored. To many observers, it sounded less like an update and more like a warning that difficult days were ahead. The announcement arrived with the precision and restraint that have long defined royal communications. There were no dramatic declarations, no emotional language, and certainly no details that would reveal the full scale of what was happening behind palace walls. Yet that restraint became the story itself. The statement appeared carefully constructed to reassure the public, while revealing as little as possible. But in trying to calm growing fears, it achieved the opposite. Every word was scrutinized. Every phrase was examined. Every omission became a source of speculation. Almost immediately, the reaction spread across Britain and throughout the Commonwealth. Citizens who had followed the royal family for decades sensed that this was not an ordinary update. The language felt unusually cautious. There was a noticeable absence of certainty. Instead of offering clear answers, the statement seemed to acknowledge that a significant challenge had emerged, while stopping short of explaining exactly what that challenge was. For many, that uncertainty was deeply unsettling. Royal experts quickly entered the conversation, analyzing the wording line by line. Commentators who had spent years interpreting palace communications pointed to subtle details that appeared unusual. Certain reassurances that would normally accompany sensitive announcements were missing. Specific timelines were absent. References that might have provided context had been carefully avoided. The more experts examined the statement, the more they became convinced that the palace was attempting to manage an exceptional situation. As discussion intensified, attention turned toward what had not been said. Sometimes silence can reveal more than disclosure, and many observers believed that was precisely the case here. Questions multiplied with every passing hour. Why had the statement been released at that particular moment? What information remained behind closed doors? Why were so many public engagements quietly adjusted before the announcement became public? These unanswered questions fueled a growing sense of unease that stretched far beyond royal circles. Inside the institution itself, uncertainty reportedly continued to grow. Senior figures understood that the monarchy relies not only on tradition, but also on stability. Public confidence is built on the perception that the institution remains steady during periods of challenge. Yet maintaining that confidence becomes difficult when even those closest to the situation are confronting questions without immediate answers. The pressure was mounting. Advisors were reportedly working around the clock. Consultations continued. Plans were reviewed and revised. The atmosphere surrounding the monarchy became increasingly tense. Meanwhile, public concern reached new levels. Social media discussions exploded with theories. Newspapers devoted extensive coverage to the developing story. Broadcasters interrupted regular programming to discuss possible implications. Across this nation, people searched for clarity, hoping that new information would emerge and provide reassurance. Instead, the palace remained largely silent, allowing speculation to fill the gaps left behind. And it was those gaps that proved most troubling. The statement may have offered confirmation that something serious was unfolding, but it left critical questions unanswered. What exactly had prompted the announcement? How severe was the situation? What consequences might follow in the days and weeks ahead? Most importantly, what did this mean for the future of the monarchy itself? Those questions lingered heavily over every discussion, every headline, and every private conversation taking place behind palace doors. As concerns spread beyond palace gates, attention quickly turned toward the people who would now be forced to confront the crisis directly. Away from cameras and public appearances, a series of private meetings began unfolding inside royal residences. The atmosphere was described as tense, emotional, and unlike anything staff had witnessed in years. As questions continued to swirl outside palace gates, the focus shifted inward. Behind closed doors, the people carrying the weight of the monarchy were now confronting a situation that appeared far more serious than the public had been led to believe. The carefully controlled statement released by Buckingham Palace had bought time, but it had not solved the growing crisis. Instead, it marked the beginning of an intense period of consultations, discussions, and difficult decisions that would test the resilience of the institution itself. Senior royals were reportedly summoned into a series of emergency meetings, each one carrying an unmistakable sense of urgency. These were not routine gatherings designed to coordinate public duties or ceremonial events. They were conversations driven by necessity. The stakes were simply too high. Advisors, legal experts, senior household officials, and trusted members of the family found themselves drawn into discussions that stretched for hours. Every possible outcome was examined. Every risk was considered. Every decision carried consequences that could shape the monarchy's future for years to come. What made the situation particularly difficult was the nature of the information being presented. Advisors were reportedly delivering assessments that few wanted to hear. The reality emerging behind closed doors was forcing some of the most influential figures in the royal family to confront uncomfortable truths. Optimism was becoming harder to maintain. Confidence was increasingly challenged by uncertainty. Each new briefing seemed to raise fresh concerns rather than provide reassurance. The emotional impact quickly became impossible to ignore. For all the tradition, ceremony, and public responsibility that surround royal life, moments like these reveal something more personal. Behind every title is a family. Behind every official statement are individuals struggling with fear, doubt, and heartbreak. Reports suggested that emotions ran high during several of the discussions. Family members who had spent their lives preparing for duty now found themselves facing questions with no easy answers. The pressure was relentless. Particularly difficult was the burden placed upon those expected to guide the institution through the crisis. Key decision-makers faced an impossible balancing act. They needed to protect the monarchy while also confronting the painful realities unfolding, Behind the scenes, every choice carried risks, every delay invited speculation, every action would be scrutinized by the public, the media, and history itself. The responsibility weighed heavily on everyone involved. Despite these challenges, there remained a determined effort to preserve stability. Palace officials understood that uncertainty can spread quickly, especially when information is limited. Maintaining public confidence became a priority. Plans were adjusted. Communications were carefully coordinated. Public appearances were evaluated one by one. Yet even as efforts were made to project calm, concern continued to grow within royal circles. The greatest fear was not simply the immediate crisis, but what might follow. Questions about the monarchy's long-term future began surfacing more frequently during private discussions. Advisors reportedly examined scenarios that only months earlier would have seemed unthinkable. Contingency plans were quietly reviewed. Protocols were revisited. Preparations were made for possibilities nobody wanted to acknowledge openly. And as those conversations continued, an unsettling realization slowly began to emerge. This was not a tragedy that had appeared overnight. The deeper officials looked into the situation, the more they began connecting events, decisions, and warning signs that stretched back much further than anyone initially realized. Yet the deeper those conversations became, the more it became clear that this tragedy was connected to challenges that had been building for months. Looking back, many insiders now believe the signs had been there all along. Small moments that seemed insignificant at the time suddenly appeared to form part of a much larger and far more alarming picture. As palace officials continued examining the crisis from every possible angle, a troubling pattern began to emerge. Events that had once been dismissed as routine developments were now being revisited with fresh concern. Decisions that appeared harmless months earlier suddenly seemed loaded with hidden meaning. The deeper investigators looked, the more difficult it became to ignore the possibility that the monarchy had been moving toward this moment for far longer than anyone wanted to admit. What made the realization so unsettling was how ordinary many of the warning signs had seemed when they first appeared. A canceled engagement here, an unexpected schedule adjustment there, a postponed appearance explained away as a simple change of plans. At the time, few people questioned these developments. The royal family's calendar is constantly evolving, and alterations are not uncommon. Yet, viewed through the lens of the current crisis, those same events began forming a sequence that was impossible to overlook. Royal watchers who followed every movement of the family started connecting details that previously appeared unrelated. There had been subtle shifts in priorities. Certain commitments quietly disappeared. Some appearances felt shorter than expected. Others were unexpectedly delegated to different members of the family. None of these developments caused alarm individually, but together they painted a picture of an institution quietly adapting to pressures that remained hidden from public view. Behind palace walls, concerns had reportedly been raised long before the official announcement was ever released. Advisors and senior staff were said to have monitored developments carefully, hoping that emerging problems could be managed privately. Conversations became more frequent. Assessments became more detailed. Contingency discussions reportedly began months before the public became aware that anything unusual was happening. The challenge was not simply understanding the situation. It was determining whether it would stabilize or continue to worsen. The strain placed upon royal operations gradually became more difficult to conceal. The monarchy is built upon consistency, tradition, and continuity. Yet maintaining that image requires enormous effort, especially during periods of uncertainty. Staff members found themselves balancing public expectations against private realities. Schedules required constant revision. Long-term planning became increasingly complicated. Every adjustment created new challenges, and every challenge demanded solutions that were often crafted far from public view. What is particularly striking in hindsight is the extent to which officials worked to keep those concerns private. There was no desire to create unnecessary alarm. Those closest to the situation reportedly believed that patience and careful management could prevent the crisis from escalating. They hoped circumstances would improve. They hoped the warning signs would prove temporary. Most importantly, they hoped the institution could continue moving forward without being forced into a confrontation with uncomfortable realities. For a time, that optimism seemed justified. The monarchy continued functioning. Public duties were carried out. Official engagements proceeded. Reassuring messages were delivered. To the outside world, stability appeared intact. Yet beneath that carefully maintained confidence, uncertainty continued growing. The problems that officials hoped would fade away instead became more persistent. Each passing week made it harder to dismiss concerns as temporary setbacks. And that is what makes this chapter of the story so haunting. The signs were there. The warnings existed. The concerns had been raised. Yet because everyone desperately wanted improvement, many convinced themselves that better days were just around the corner. They believed time would provide answers. They believed patience would bring relief. They believed the institution would once again find its balance. Unfortunately, the developments that followed would prove those hopes were misplaced. There comes a point in every crisis when uncertainty disappears and reality takes its place. For the royal family, that moment arrived during a series of conversations that insiders describe as heartbreaking. For months, questions had lingered in the background. Concerns had been managed, worries had been contained, and optimism had been carefully preserved. But eventually, the point arrived where hope could no longer outweigh reality. The discussions taking place behind palace walls reportedly shifted in tone. What had once been conversations about possibilities became conversations about consequences. What had once been cautious concern became unmistakable acknowledgement that the situation was far more serious than anyone had wanted to believe. The confirmation hit with enormous force. Those closest to the unfolding events were no longer dealing with speculation or uncertainty. They were confronting facts, difficult facts, painful facts, the kind of truths that alter plans, reshape expectations, and force people to rethink the future. For members of the royal family, this was not simply another challenge to be managed. It was a deeply personal crisis unfolding inside one of the world's most visible institutions. Reports suggest that family members were forced to confront realities they had hoped to avoid. Conversations became more emotional. The weight of responsibility collided with the pain of uncertainty. Behind every discussion about schedules, duties, and public responsibilities was a much more human struggle. The monarchy may be built on tradition and continuity, but it is still carried by individuals who experience fear, disappointment, and heartbreak like anyone else. That truth became impossible to ignore. The emotional impact spread far beyond the immediate family. Advisors, household officials, and long-serving staff members found themselves grappling with the seriousness of the situation as well. Many had dedicated years, even decades, to supporting the institution. They understood the importance of maintaining stability during periods of turbulence. Yet they also understood that some challenges cannot simply be managed away. Some moments change everything. This appeared to be one of them. For senior royals, the burden became particularly heavy. Decisions that once seemed straightforward now carried extraordinary consequences. Every option involved sacrifice. Every path forward contained uncertainty. The responsibility of protecting the monarchy while navigating a deeply sensitive situation created pressure, unlike anything they had experienced in years. The institution demanded strength. The circumstances demanded compassion. Balancing those competing demands became increasingly difficult. Meanwhile, public concern reached unprecedented levels. The longer questions remained unanswered, the more intense the speculation became. Across Britain and throughout the Commonwealth, millions followed every development closely. People searched for reassurance but found very little. Each new report generated fresh concern. Each silence created new questions. The growing sense that something historic was unfolding began to dominate conversations far beyond royal circles. What made the situation even more unsettling was the feeling that history might somehow be repeating itself. The royal family has endured moments of profound challenge before. It has faced periods of uncertainty, loss, and transition. As comparisons to past crises began emerging, many observers found themselves wondering whether another defining chapter in royal history was now being written. The parallels were impossible to ignore, and the emotional weight of those memories only intensified the anxiety surrounding the present moment. By now, the reality could no longer be softened or delayed. The crisis was real, the consequences were real, and the decisions waiting ahead would shape not only the lives of those directly involved, but potentially the future direction of the monarchy itself. The institution had reached a turning point, and everyone understood that the next steps would matter enormously. As the gravity of the situation became undeniable, attention shifted toward one critical question: what happens next? For centuries, the monarchy has survived wars, scandals, and national upheaval. But some insiders believe this latest challenge could become one of the defining tests of the modern royal era. As the immediate shock began to settle, a larger and more complicated question emerged. This was no longer simply about a single crisis or a difficult chapter for one family. Increasingly, attention turned toward what the situation might mean for the institution itself. The British monarchy has endured because it has always found ways to adapt while preserving the traditions that define it. Yet, every generation eventually encounters a moment that tests its strength, and many observers began wondering whether this was one of those moments. Behind the discussions taking place at Buckingham Palace was a growing awareness that the consequences could extend far beyond the present. Constitutional responsibilities, public expectations, and institutional stability all appeared connected to whatever decisions would follow. The monarchy's greatest asset has always been continuity. It provides a sense of permanence in a rapidly changing world. But continuity depends upon confidence, and confidence becomes harder to maintain when uncertainty dominates the conversation. This reality placed increasing pressure upon those expected to lead the institution into the future. Senior royals found themselves carrying responsibilities that extended beyond their personal feelings. The public looked to them for reassurance. The nation expected composure. Millions wanted evidence that the monarchy remained capable of navigating the storm. Yet behind every public appearance and carefully prepared statement stood individuals confronting challenges unlike anything they had anticipated. The expectations were immense. At moments of national concern, people naturally search for leadership. They seek stability. They seek certainty. They seek signs that those entrusted with responsibility remain firmly in control. The royal family understood this better than anyone. That understanding made every decision more significant. Every appearance mattered. Every message carried weight. Every action was interpreted as a clue about what might happen next. At the same time, difficult questions continued to surface regarding continuity and long-term stability. Advisors reportedly examined various possibilities while considering how future developments could affect the institution. These discussions were not driven by panic but by necessity. Responsible leadership requires preparation. Yet the very existence of such conversations revealed the seriousness of the moment. Palace officials were no longer focused solely on managing the present. They were increasingly concerned with protecting the future. Historical comparisons became impossible to avoid. Throughout its long history, the monarchy has faced periods when its resilience was questioned. There were moments when critics predicted decline. There were moments when uncertainty threatened confidence. And yet, time after time, the institution endured. Those precedents offered some reassurance. They reminded people that the crown had survived challenges that once seemed overwhelming, but they also served as a warning. History demonstrated that difficult transitions often come with significant personal sacrifice. Recognizing these concerns, efforts to reassure the nation intensified. Palace communications remained measured and deliberate. Public duties continued wherever possible. The message being projected was one of stability, resilience, and determination. Officials understood that public confidence could not be allowed to erode. The monarchy needed to demonstrate that it remained capable of fulfilling its role even during periods of profound uncertainty. Yet beneath that carefully maintained confidence, deeper emotions continued to shape every conversation. The institution may have been projecting strength, but those closest to the crisis understood that the road ahead remained uncertain. Important decisions still awaited. Difficult realities still had to be confronted. And while the monarchy worked tirelessly to preserve stability, the personal toll of the situation was becoming increasingly impossible to ignore. While officials worked to project confidence, private emotions behind palace walls told a very different story. Beyond titles, traditions, and ceremonial duties stands a family confronting a deeply personal tragedy. And behind the official statements lies a level of pain that few outsiders will ever fully understand. As the monarchy struggled to navigate one of the most difficult periods in recent memory, the focus increasingly shifted away from institutions and toward the individuals carrying the burden of the crisis. Public discussions often centered on constitutional questions, succession concerns, and the future of the crown. Yet behind those larger debates was something far more human. There was a family trying to cope with uncertainty while the entire world watched from a distance. For those closest to the situation, the emotional toll was immense. Every new development brought fresh challenges. Every conversation carried emotional weight. Every day seemed to present another difficult reality that had to be confronted. While public attention remained fixed on official announcements and royal appearances, private emotions continued unfolding beyond public view. The pressure of carrying personal grief while fulfilling public responsibilities created a burden few people could truly imagine. The crisis also affected relationships within the family itself. During moments of hardship, families often grow closer, but they can also face new tensions as different personalities respond in different ways. Some individuals focus on practical solutions. Others struggle quietly with the emotional impact. Some become protectors. Others seek reassurance. As the situation intensified, each family member was forced to navigate the crisis in their own way, while remaining connected to the broader needs of the institution. Personal sacrifices became unavoidable. Plans were changed. Priorities shifted. Commitments that once seemed important suddenly felt secondary. The responsibilities of royal life did not disappear, but they became more difficult to balance against personal concerns. Family members found themselves dividing their attention between public expectations and private realities. It was a constant struggle. Duty demanded strength, yet the emotional cost of maintaining that strength continued to grow. Amid those challenges, support systems within the palace became increasingly important. Trusted advisors, long-serving staff, and close family members worked quietly to provide stability during a period marked by uncertainty. These relationships often operate far from public attention, but in moments of crisis they become essential. Encouragement, guidance, and simple acts of support helped sustain those carrying the heaviest burdens. Even within one of the world's most famous institutions, people still depend on one another when circumstances become overwhelming. Outside palace walls, public sympathy continued growing stronger. As more details emerged, many people began viewing the situation through a more personal lens. The story was no longer simply about the monarchy. It was about individuals facing hardship while attempting to fulfill responsibilities that never pause. Messages of support appeared across the country. Conversations became more compassionate. Even critics found themselves acknowledging the human dimension of the unfolding crisis. Yet perhaps the greatest challenge was the ongoing struggle between private grief and public duty. The monarchy is built upon continuity. Public appearances must continue. Ceremonies must proceed. Responsibilities must be fulfilled. But emotional pain does not follow official schedules. The people involved were expected to maintain composure even while confronting circumstances that would test anyone's resilience. That contrast created some of the most difficult moments of all. And despite their efforts, maintaining that composure became increasingly demanding. Behind every measured statement and carefully planned appearance was a deeper emotional battle. The future remained uncertain. Important decisions still loomed ahead. Questions remained unanswered. The crisis had already changed the lives of those closest to it, and there was growing recognition that even greater challenges might still lie ahead. Yet even amid heartbreak, preparations were already being made for a future that now seemed uncertain. The tragic development announced by Buckingham Palace may mark the end of one chapter, but it could also signal the beginning of another. The decisions made in the coming weeks may shape the monarchy for decades to come. As the crisis entered a new phase, attention increasingly turned toward the future. The immediate shock had given way to deeper questions about what comes next. While the monarchy had faced difficult periods before, this moment carried a unique significance because it touched not only the present, but also the years that lay ahead. The choices being considered behind palace walls were no longer focused solely on managing a crisis. They were focused on shaping the future direction of one of the world's oldest institutions. The potential long-term consequences were impossible to ignore. Every major challenge leaves its mark on history, and many observers believed this would be no exception. The monarchy has always evolved through periods of adversity. Times of uncertainty often force institutions to adapt, reconsider priorities, and strengthen areas that may have been overlooked. This crisis appeared destined to become one of those defining moments. The lessons learned today could influence decisions for an entire generation. Adaptation has always been one of the monarchy's greatest strengths. While tradition remains at its heart, survival has often depended upon the ability to adjust to changing circumstances. As discussions continued, many believed new approaches would be required. The institution would need to balance continuity with change, stability with flexibility, and public expectations with private realities. Achieving that balance would not be easy, but history suggests that the crown has repeatedly found ways to endure by evolving when necessary. Meanwhile, public hopes and concerns continued to exist. Across Britain and throughout the Commonwealth, people watched developments closely. Some feared what the future might hold. Others remained optimistic that the monarchy would emerge stronger after enduring such a difficult period. What united many observers was a shared recognition that they were witnessing a significant moment in modern royal history. The outcome remained uncertain, but the importance of the moment could not be questioned. Increasingly, attention also shifted toward the next generation. Future leaders of the monarchy found themselves under growing scrutiny as people looked for signs of what the years ahead might bring. Expectations were rising, responsibilities were becoming more visible. The crisis had highlighted the importance of preparation, resilience, and leadership. For younger members of the royal family, the events unfolding around them were not simply lessons from history. They were experiences that could shape how they approached their future roles. At the same time, questions of legacy began emerging more frequently. Every generation leaves behind a story. Some are remembered for triumphs. Others are remembered for challenges overcome through determination and sacrifice. As discussions about the future continued, many wondered how this chapter would ultimately be remembered. Would it be viewed as a period of hardship that strengthened the monarchy, or as a turning point that reshaped it forever? The answer remained unwritten. Perhaps the most important lesson from the crisis was the reminder that even the most enduring institutions remain vulnerable to uncertainty. Strength does not come from avoiding challenges. It comes from confronting them. The monarchy's response during this period may ultimately become one of the defining elements of its monarchy legacy. Yet despite months of discussion, speculation, and analysis, many questions remain unanswered. That uncertainty is what makes this story so compelling. Important decisions still lie ahead. New developments may emerge. Hidden details may eventually come to light. For now, the future remains unwritten, suspended between tradition and transformation, between stability and change, between what is known and what remains hidden behind palace walls. Because while Buckingham Palace has finally acknowledged the tragedy, the full story, and its lasting impact on the future of the monarchy may only now be beginning. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.